Welcome to The Bar is Ankle High, your favorite ADHD podcast that explores life's low bars with wit and wisdom. This is episode 98, and I'm Katie.
I'm Garrett, and I don't have that level of enthusiasm at this point. I think Katie's just jazzed in general right now.
I did get super excited from what we talked about on Patreon, and if you want to know what we talked about on Patreon, then you can join our Patreon for just $5 per month, and you get ad-free and extended and video episodes. You also get added to our close friends list on Instagram. You get an on-air shout out. You get goodies from us in the mail. It's a good
God!
time.
Plus, you can see my little tiny baby bangs that are growing in,
and my little space buns that are how I can read people's minds, according to Liz Lemon when she's trying to get off jury duty.
That's great. We love that, Katie. So should we get into our...
Yeah, I don't remember what the Sagoo was, but...
we were talking about a very imaginative game.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought today, so I don't... Have you ever listened to the podcast Radio Lab?
No.
Okay.
I think you sent me one episode once, and I listened. It was like part of one episode.
Oh, it was it was that whale one. You're talking about the whale calls. Yeah.
Yes.
So Radio Lab, I would say that's probably the first podcast I ever listened to. And it's just a really high quality. Their episodes aren't super long, and it's kind of like science-y. But they always they just share these really cool stories that you just don't hear anywhere else. So if you've not listened to it, definitely check it out. And Radio Lab did this episode where they were talking about aphantasia or aphantasia. Which is the inability.
She was like the fourth runner-up in American Idol.
Yeah, that's what the episode was about, Katie. Has totally everything to do with the imagination things we were just talking about. So there is aphantasia, aphantasia, where you don't have a mind's eye, like you can't picture something.
Oh.
And then there's hyperphantasia, where you have a super vivid imagination. So I researched those two things, and I thought that that's what we could talk about today because...
So people with aphantasia, like if you say picture an apple, they can't picture it at all?
That's the example they use. So one of the things... So how this topic came up... Hold on. I'm tangled. How this...
Every time.
I know. It's always like when I'm ready to settle in and do things too. Okay. So the woman who was covering this episode on that podcast... She realized that she had it because she was talking to this neurologist, and he was like, oh yeah, for example, if you tell somebody to picture an apple, and he starts going through, and she was like, she realized she couldn't picture an apple. Could she
picture what he was describing?
No.
Once it's described to her, she still can't picture it?
If she sees a picture of an apple, she's like, yeah, that's an apple. But if you say to her, picture an apple, she can't envision an apple.
So she has internal face blindness, but for everything.
It's a thing.
So if she says, if they say, picture your mom, she can't picture her?
No. Yeah, it's crazy. So this is not
wild.
Oh yeah, and this is so. There was a theory that this scientist who was a eugenicist came up with in the 1800s, and everybody was like, go fuck yourself. Nobody really paid attention. And they
Except
didn't
for the
really.
Nazis.
Yeah, the Nazis were like, you know what?
Yeah.
We like these
Charles
things.
Lindbergh.
Yes. And Harry Houdini. Houdini's probably just fucking leave me alone. God damn. Yeah. All I did was get punched in the tummy. It's not my fault.
All these autistics on the bar is ankle high really need to keep my name out of their mouth.
Yeah. Haunt the fuck out of them until they get sucked off.
Gotta rism with the tism. That's what I say.
So, this was something that I think what actually caused a resurgence in this theory that this guy who was on that podcast, this neurologist, his name is Zeman. Or Zeman, not Seaman, Katie. He
prove it.
No. So I guess there was a guy who had a really vivid imagination, had a brain injury, and lost the ability to like he lost his like mind's eye is the way they kind of have been putting it. So that caused this guy to like now do all this research into it. So it's still it's like a relatively newly named concept. And there's not a ton of like data on it because it is new. But it made me think about remember on SpongeBob, use your imagination and like the little rainbows come up. That's what this makes me think of. So,
which is perfect because last week's episode was the SpongeBob meme where he's like, oh, me.
Yeah. And Gary was also involved in that one, but like not the same way. So hyperphantasia is like when somebody has this ability to not just like see with their mind's eye, but like visualize an infinite number of situations and environments. And it's also like being able to like recall memories, but so vividly that you're like in the moment, as opposed like it transports you instead of just thinking about it. So they're thinking that as many as 1 in 30 people may have this hyperphantasia. But that neurologist said he estimates it's like up to 10% of the world population, like extrapolating it. But I mean,
those are our time travelers. We need to find those people.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that will be able, like their bodies won't get ripped apart when we shove them through the black holes.
Yep.
I saw Interstellar. That's pretty much what happened.
I didn't see that. Oh no, I watched The Arrival recently. That's what I watched.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That was a really
time
good
is
one.
a flat circle thing.
That was where it's what's
with Amy Adams, right? Yeah. And they like
they spoke that language
in like the circles. The ink blots. Yeah.
Yeah. And they
That's
like
a cool
hold the like secret to that was really good. So they were saying, so there was like a list of things that they think is like, this isn't, so it's not a diagnosis. It's not listed as like an official thing. It's more that it's more about how your brain is processing. So it's just like a difference in how your brain is processing between these two things.
Okay. So it's not a disorder one way or the other.
Right. Because my eyes are seeing the same thing as your eyes are, but maybe mine, I'm then taking it and running with it. So it's what my brain's doing with it. It's not what my eyes are actually seeing. So the things that they listed off, ability to dissociate from reality, a tendency to get immersed in media like books and movies, incessant daydreaming, so that's where I took it and ran with it because they were talking about this and I'm thinking, that's how I daydream. Like as a kid, I could sit there and look out the window and I could sit there all day. Just, a feeling of longing for something, feelings of nostalgia, remembering the past, and difficulty shutting off your brain. And they say like these people kind of have a hard time like staying in the present because they're like, there's so many more exciting things to be doing than sitting and having, sitting in a classroom or, having a going to a lecture, having a conversation with somebody that's boring. Like, so the way that some of the examples that they were using, people were saying how like, she said, are you doing that right now while we're talking? And the one lady was like, oh yeah, like I'm thinking about this plot. And like, I definitely imagine plots all the time. But they were saying how like, they'll read a book and it's like they're standing in the room with the characters.
Yes.
And which like when I read that, I have to do that. Like I have to like almost like dip into the story.
Yeah.
And
I thought that's what was supposed to happen. Like that's how it's good writing.
But not everybody does it. So this is kind of like when people are like, wait a minute, not everybody has an inner dialogue. This is the same thing. So
I also have an inner dialogue.
I think in both. I think both in inner dialogue and in pictures. And colors and stuff. It's like a combination.
I think more in just the voice, but I can imagine like images. I like if you tell me to picture my mom, I know what she looks like, and I could describe what she looks like to you.
Yeah.
That's just wild to me that like even people like okay, picture a castle in the sky, and you're like, I've never seen a castle in the sky, I can't picture it. Versus like, this is a person that I've actually seen, who I know, and I still can't I can't picture that. It's not even like I can't describe it to you, but like I can't picture it.
So there's a lady that has this aphantasia. She said the fact that they were talking about the most upsetting component of this aphantasia. She said the fact that if I'm not with my children, I can't see them. I can't bring up an image of them. I can tell you to every detail what they look like, their mannerisms, even what clothes they've gone off in this morning, but I don't have an image of them. So like you can explain it. Like there was a lady who was saying like, you know, I gave birth and it's this big, you know, life-changing experience. She said, I can tell you how I felt, but I can't like immerse myself in that situation. Like I can't, she can't go back and picture it.
I mean, I guess like from a parenting point of view, I'm glad that lady could like tell the police what her children were wearing that day if they go missing. But like,
I know.
That's so weird. Like I'm saying it's weird just because like that's so not how my brain is. Like
right. And that's what like everybody who has either one of these is like, what?
So the people
can't picture things.
You might get to this. Is there any correlation that they've noticed or connection of any kind between people with aphantasia, where they can't picture anything, and then developing Alzheimer's or dementia later in life?
No. So one of the things that they did mention was there are some overlaps with like other things. So the really vivid imagery, so the hyperphantasia, there's some correlation between like mood disorders. So things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, and they're thinking some of that is because when you can think about something and it can cause so most of this hyperphantasia, we're referring to visual stimuli, but in theory it can apply to all of your senses. So
I mean,
you can like immerse yourself, or you've then got, you know, let's say you've got ADHD and you ruminate for a really long time. You combine that rumination with this ability to like almost time travel and feel things so intensely. And that's one of the things that they talk about, is that this can cause like a like emotional dysregulation, basically, because you feel things so intensely.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, can confirm, at least from a PTSD standpoint, like one of the things that was really tough for me was to not, because when I was remembering what happened, I would go back to that place where it happened and live through what happened every time. And it was just like, it was awful because I just couldn't get out of it.
Right.
And even now, like when I think of that day, like I am picturing everything that happened.
Yes.
I'm like truly reliving it.
Yes. And that's one of the things they talk about is like you're more susceptible to PTSD if you've got this hyperphantasia, because everything is like so tangible feeling for you. And they also said that schizophrenia and Parkinson's disease can be aggravated by this hyperphantasia because of the component of hallucinations. Because, I mean, you think about it, if you've got a really vivid imagination.
You hallucinate with Parkinson's?
I think some of the Parkinson's you do.
Huh.
I don't think it's like all of them, but I think some of them.
I'm learning so much today.
It's just the way you said that. Just, I don't know why that just struck me so funny. Let me see. I've been like jumping around my notes, so I'm just trying to see like what. No, no. Oh no, it's me too, because I'm like, I just think it's like a conversationally, it's like a very cool thing. So they described this imagery as an emotional amplifier was the term that they kept using. Which I'm thinking like, so obviously this was not told in the context of ADHD, but that was like the first thing I thought of. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
daydreaming.
Well,
like
an emotional dysregulation, like
emotional
it makes sense.
yes.
Because if I'm going to daydream, like if I've perceived a transgression and then I daydream into these different scenarios of what that
Yes.
could mean or why or where it's going and all this other stuff, then like, yeah, you're going to have a dysregulated emotional response.
But the flip side is they also said that sometimes people with the hyperphantasia are better at like anticipating things and
Okay.
understanding like context to things or maybe like the emotional impact of something because you spend so much time like off in your own world. Like a lot of times that's what you're thinking about is
Right.
I mean, like I know something, I mean, I really love like interior design type stuff. So for me, like I can sit there and I'm looking at a room and I'm like, okay, so if you took everything out and you painted it this color and you put in furniture kind of like this, like that's what my brain would be doing. But like there's some people that just, that's not how their brains work.
Right.
And they don't even really know structurally what the difference is between these two states of brain processing because it's such a complex, like you think about this and it's not just, you know, like we talk about, okay, like the emotional dysregulation, how like you've got this really strong amygdala. So you're like, oh, okay, so I can see why I'm, you know, jumping and everything feels so scattered and messy because I'm in this fight or flight thing. But when you think about something like this, I mean, if your focus isn't well regulated and you're off in your own world, that's one thing. And then you've got maybe, you know, your thing is you really like space and all you're doing is like thinking about space, or you really like unicorns. So you're literally picturing all of these scenes with unicorns. Like it
know
just
what I'm
involves
picturing
or
is-
memories.
Do you remember those? They were like peak 90s, but the folders with the underwater scenes.
Oh yeah.
But it was
like Lisa
all
Frank.
layers. Yes.
Yes.
But it was like not Lisa Frank. It was like very hyper realistic
Yeah.
stuff. I could get lost forever staring at those things.
Yeah.
Still probably to this day.
Yeah.
Man, I fucking love those folders. They were so cool.
And that's what it makes me think of is like, this makes me think of like Lisa Frank. Like, you know, a rainbow coming down and you've got a rainbow colored jaguar walking down this rainbow, like really wild stuff. And
So cool.
And you've got the component of like memory involved with it too. So there's so many different, and all of your different senses. So like, how do you even pin down what part of that brain you're using? Because I feel like it's like your whole brain. It's like all of these different things. And another thing that they talked about when I was reading about this, maybe when I was listening to an episode about this, I don't know, whatever it was, they were talking about like brain development, and this is kind of aside from this, but I had never heard it described that way, and it just made perfect sense how like our brains have evolved from like the base up. So like this is like the most advanced, this is like the forehead basically is where is what is going to separate us from like animals, because that's the most recently developed part of our brain that's like the most advanced. Like this is the most, like at the base of your neck, like where your brainstem is the most basic stuff, your most basic bodily function and brain function. And as you work your way towards the front, that's
that
the
makes
most
sense
advanced.
because like Neanderthal or like the early man, like skeletons, their heads are very flat. I mean, it's like a gorilla or some other primate, where like our heads are very oval.
Right, with like a big prominent brow and like a low forehead. And now our heads are so much rounder. Like that's the most recently developed part of our brain. That's like the most advanced. So when I heard that explained, I was like, that's fucking,
so then
that's
the
so
aliens
smart.
from Mars Attacks are more advanced than us.
Because they're from the future, because they have giant foreheads.
Big brains. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And they need a thing to hold their head.
That makes sense.
Although sometimes I feel like my head is so heavy that I would love a little, just a little rest for it. That's all. Just give me a little chin rest on everything. I see my dog like always resting his head on something. I'm like, you've got the right idea. They also said that a lot of people with the hypervisual brains also have synesthesia, which is where, say it?
Synesthesia.
That.
Yeah, where they'll say a name and they can like picture a color.
They can taste colors and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when Kanye says like he can see it. He talks about like being able to visually like see music. That's like a form of that. Like people being able to like feel sounds. Or people, I read one lady said that she had a lot of trouble in school when she was a kid with math because she felt like, okay, if I have 2 + 3, that's 5, and 5 is red. 5 is a red color.
Yes.
And any number that ends in a 5 is a red color. And if the answer was 6, 6 is a blue color. So it has it, you know what I mean? Like she would change answers so that the colors made sense to her, which meant then she's getting answers wrong and they think she's
I was going to say like
dumb because she can't figure out these math problems. She's like, no, like I know the answer, but that's not the answer because the colors don't work. Because she has these like associations with colors and numbers, which I thought was interesting.
I mean, I'm seeing the overlap with like schizophrenia or something. Because if you try to explain that to somebody, they're going to say, all right, well, we're going to go put you in. We're going to go put you in this room over here while we sort out what your fucking problem is.
Yeah.
With, like, it can't possibly be this number because this number is blue and not red. And
or what if you're saying to a kid, draw a picture of an apple, and they have they have this aphantasia or whatever it is, aphantasia, and they can't.
Fantasia Barrino.
Yep. Hypophantasia. like the test that they were giving, it wasn't even like picture an apple. It was like, can you feel the weight of an apple in your hand? Can you, if you're looking at a plate, what kind of apple is it? Where's the light coming from? Where is, is it sitting on a table? Is it sitting on a plate? Like all of these different factors that she was just like, nope, 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 nope. So there's like all of these different like, tests that they use for that.
Which, to be fair, like, I'm not picturing any of those things until you ask me it. And then I can like populate the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like for me, the way it's like picture an apple, and I can picture the apple from like Busy Town. The
yeah. Like a Red Delicious. And that was one of like, what type of apple
like
is it?
A real apple. Like when you say like, yeah, like, so then you're like, okay, well, what type of apple? Well, probably the kind of apple that I like to eat. So it would be like a Honeycrisp apple, and it would look like this. Okay, well, where's the light coming from? Oh, well, I guess if there's going to be light, then, maybe it's on the kitchen counter, so the light's coming in from behind, Now I'm picturing like a still life situation.
But you can
rather
picture
than
it.
like, and, can you feel the weight of it in your hand? Yeah, sure. Well, what color is it? Yeah, I can do all these things, but it's sort of like until you, and maybe that's how like my brain is regulating it's like CPUs or whatever, but like I'm not using the energy to come up with this whole scenario until you ask me
specifically
to give you a scenario. You ask me a very pointed question, but I am capable of like I can picture the weight of an apple in my hand right now.
Yeah, because like immediately when you say to me picture an apple, I'm immediately going like this with an apple, like holding it and feeling the weight of it.
Its balls. Like
just teabagging with an apple. I don't. They did make a point too to point out that hyperphantasia is different from a photographic memory. A photographic memory, like, okay, so this happened and I can remember, exactly what I was wearing, exactly what you were wearing, how we were standing, the color of the room, whatever else. Hyperphantasia is like, we were standing in the room and then, a dragon burst through the window and shot fire at us and we all turned to dust. Like, there's so much more to it than just the photographic memory of what happened. So I was thinking, when I'm thinking about this, in with the lens of ADHD, you know, people with this aphantasia tend to go for like science careers. You know, they're going for like mathematics. They're going for things that don't require a lot of like imaginative thinking, where like maybe an engineer might have hyperphantasia, that ability to like think outside the box. And that's not to say like there's a lot of overlap with hyperphantasia and autism and ADHD, but there's also lots of people that have that aphantasia that have autism and ADHD. So it's not like, you know, you have one, you have the other. But when I'm reading about this, all I can think is like that creative thinking, that outside the box thinking, the daydreaming, difficulty regulating your focus. You might be able to focus on something like the unicorn that you just pictured walking into the room, but maybe you can't focus on the things you're supposed to focus on. Having that busy brain and the emotional regulation, which is still to me like the most shocking part of learning about ADHD. I'm still not over that. And that was like our third episode.
I didn't realize that part surprised you so much.
I'm still shocked. Still shocked. I still think about it all the time.
It's like me with the sleeping.
Yeah. There's times where I'm like, oh, that's right. That's right. That's a thing. And it's like, you know, so if you say to somebody to think about, just to show like this brain perception, right? The difference in brain perception. So like if I say to you, picture looking at the sun, you immediately, your pupils will get really tiny. Like it's like it's like an automatic thing. So like most people, the vast majority of people, if you say to them, or think about like looking into a dark room, their pupils will dilate. So your that brain eye connection is so strong that normally like all you have to do is think about it. If you have aphantasia, it doesn't do anything. So if you think about looking at the sun, your pupils don't change.
Is that why Trump looked at the solar eclipse?
There was a lot more going on with that, I think, than... Although that same day, I did very briefly look at it and I was like, fuck! I'm just as dumb as he is. Oh my God. They are. Oh, and to go back to that point that you said earlier about like the like dementia, Alzheimer's type thing with the aphantasia. Yeah. They are thinking that there might be like a memory impairment, or like overlap with like autism, face blindness, because it is like wild to think that there's like people that like can't like think of somebody and picture them.
I mean, either way, you know, like either it's the hypophantasia people or the aphantasia people having more prevalence or whatever of ending up with dementia or something, because I think either like I could see it going either way. So either you have this emotional connection to a memory that replays it in your mind, but like you're using up your mind's ability to do that
time
for
travel,
you, so
right?
that
Like you're just older, time traveling.
The ability to do that, to do that so quickly. Whereas, you know, alternatively, you're losing the ability to recall. So just like that woman said, she can tell you what everybody was wearing that morning and describe them, her kids to you, but she can't pull up a picture in her mind's eye. Is it that when you have dementia or Alzheimer's, you are able to, like, you can, like, all those videos of people being like, oh, I don't have a daughter. You know, if I had a daughter, they would be like this, and their daughter is sitting next to them, like visiting them in their like memory care facility. Yeah. Just trying to like have a meeting with them. And it's like, they can't remember it because there isn't that emotional response in their brain to this person in front of them, but they can describe certain things like, oh, my husband was da 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 da, and can describe all these things. Right. But because they're not able to picture it in their mind's eye, are they then losing the connections? Like, well, I had a husband, we got married, and then we had kids, and I have a daughter, and this is my daughter. Like, they're losing that continuity of memory. Right. And that's what's leading to like different types of dementia or more severe dementia or whatever. Like, I really don't know very much about dementia. So like, I can also see what I see on like a random video or
Right.
The Notebook. So just those two. I feel like that's most people's point of reference, unless you have a family member with it.
I can also see, like, if you have that hyperphantasia, like, I mean, you know, if your brain has aged and, you know, you have, because they think it's what, like buildup of proteins or something in your brain. It's something about like the brain connections can't flow the way they're supposed to, the communication. If it's not working for all the things it's supposed to, but I can still picture, you know, memories, and I'm a space cadet. I'm never coming back. I'm just going to think about all these things that I can easily remember that are nice memories. And I know, like, when my grandfather
Well, that's
had,
kind of like the Lewy body dementia or the frontal lobe dementia that Bruce Willis has. Like, you can remember all these things, but you can't speak them. Like, you can't
the
express
aphasia.
them. So you're just in your head about it,
yeah,
and you can't communicate and
that's such
get
a
around
scary
in a
thought.
way that you want to.
I know, like, my grandfather had dementia, and like he was a very eloquent person. So to lose the word finding was extremely frustrating for him. Like, he you know, he had like thoughts that he couldn't express, and he would just get like so mad because he just like wants, like, I just want to tell you things and I can't, or even, you know, and always time traveling, like always in that that brain space. And I guess like that aphantasia, if you have a first degree relative, you're like 10 times more likely to have it yourself. So, like, you know, if you had a parent that had it, you're more likely to get it. But I just,
For
it's just
having
the
aphantasia or having dementia?
the aphantasia, to like the inability to picture things. They think that there's
Interesting.
like a genetic link. You can also get it
I mean,
from
it makes
like
sense though,
a
because
brain
like
injury.
ADHD is genetic.
I mean, I think I have a very active imagination. My mom has face blindness. So like, if you see somebody in a movie and they put a hat on, she doesn't recognize them. You're like, "Oh, that's so and so." And she's like, "No, it's not." And you're like, "Yes, it is." "No, it's not." And then you have to like pull it up and be like, "See, it's this person." She's like, "I don't even recognize them." And I'm like, "Yeah, cuz you have face blindness. That's why you don't." And it was like years. We used to have this like ongoing thing. I'd be like, "Oh, they were in such and such." No, that's not the same person. And we would have these fights, and then finally I realized, I like looked it up and I was like, "This is a thing that you have. You put a fucking hat on somebody, you dye their
that
hair a different color."
Clip from the sitcom I showed you.
Yes. Yes. And
He was very angry. Question mark for his face. Holding a cigar.
just like a stick figure. That's what he looked like.
It was, I think it's Sherry Shepherd, right?
Yes,
in that
I think so.
show?
I think so. It was very funny.
So funny.
They did say that people who have that aphantasia, because there's not that like the visual distractions all the time, they might have a better time like living in the moment, which I thought was interesting. But just the whole thing, just this whole thought of like, I don't know, my brain, I don't think I'm quite at the hyperphantasia point, but I'm definitely beyond just like a normal imagination. And could fully occupy myself all day,
It's
just like
very
staring out the
clearly
window.
like a spectrum thing.
Yes. Yeah. Although,
Yeah. Is that your siren? No, I mean, I think it is kind of clearly a spectrum thing. I don't think I'm immediately like off to the races with like imagination land, but I can get there, like, no problem. It does have, like, I mean, it's definitely in the ADHD thing where if I'm in a meeting, there's a chance that I missed what somebody said and I have to ask them to repeat it.
yeah, I'll never forget
what it is.
asking Katie something, and she was a space cadet, and I was like, "Right, Katie?" And she looked up and she went, "I'm sorry, I was just low-key sexting somebody. And I scrimped. I laughed so hard at it. it caught me so off guard.
There was no, I didn't hear a single thing you said.
No.
There was no way that I was going to be able to fake my way through the first half of the conversation until I figured out what was going on. There was just, nope, sorry. I was being inappropriate on my cell phone.
Yes.
Oops.
It was also the low key part really just. But no, I definitely like, I've always had a very active imagination, and could for sure, it like my spouse is like on a Sunday afternoon. All right, we got to do something. We gotta go someplace. We gotta get out of the house. We gotta do something. I could literally occupy myself for days. Which is why it hits nap time and he gets 500 notifications of me just doing random shit, because my brain is just like, oh, oh, you know what you could do? Paint the garage. Oh, you know what you could do? Get worms. Oh, tune into Patreon.
Get worms.
Do you hear me talking about my worms? Because I have worms.
Yeah. Garrett's got worms, and she's not taking medication for it.
I have worms and I am unmedicated. I thought this was just like the coolest thing.
Once a month.
I need to get my next guard refilled. My heart guard medication. I just thought this was like the coolest fucking thing. And it did make me think about when that news story came out where people were like, not everybody has an inner dialogue. But there were people who were saying with this aphantasia, they were like, no, I literally just shut my eyes and like my brain turns off. And I'm like, what? How?
So they live like the dolls that I had as a baby, where like you put it on its back and its eyes closed.
Yes.
And then you picked it up and its eyes opened, and that's how they live their lives, like little robots.
I remember as a kid, you know, like you would watch a cartoon or something and they would show like somebody like traveling through like a wormhole, and it would be like the swirls and they're, you know, it's like going like this, and you know what I'm talking about? Like an animation. That's what the inside of my brain would be going to sleep as a kid. Traveling through space, like whatever it was.
That's what the inside of my brain is now as a 36-and-a-half-year-old.
Yeah. I'm just like I can't even wrap my head around it. I can't even wrap my head around closing my eyes and not picturing things. Because I'm picturing so many things. There's not enough room in my brain to picture.
That's why I play Candy Crush until I pass out. Yeah. Like, we
do all these episodes where like be very careful about substance abuse and, you know, drinking excessively. Cut to Katie just like she just passes out, just sweet. That's just so great. It's just too funny.
Candy Crush.
He's got a big mustache, right? The guy.
I don't know. I have the sounds turned off because I'm not a
Katie goes,
psycho.
I don't know. I have face blindness. I don't know what that motherfucker looks like.
No, so PK was telling me that he was getting, so they, in the courthouse that he works in, when they're not having trials, everyone will like find a jury room to sit in, and like that's where they'll eat lunch. So it's like a different location from their desks or whatever. And so like people kind of like pair off in their little friends group and whatever. So one time he was in one of the jury rooms with two of the other women that he's like kind of close with at work, and there was this other person in the same jury room who's on their lunch break as well, and they were like staggered. So like his lunch break starts at 1. This person's must have been like 12:30. So there was this like half-hour overlap, and this person was on their phone playing like Candy Crush full volume. So every time they made a match or whatever, it was like bring, bring. And then every once in a while it'd be like sweet, like whatever. And he's trying to have a conversation with his friends, and it keeps like interrupting. And he was like, I don't understand who does this.
I got one.
This is the most deranged thing.
So I used to have my.
Yeah, he'll still mention it because it makes him so mad.
It would make me furious, and I would not be nice about
Yes.
it because my brain stops working. I was. I used to have my insurance license, and one of the things you have to take, you have to spend a certain number of hours doing coursework, and then you have to do a final exam and a state exam. So we're prepping for this final exam, and they had like a computer lab that you could use at this place. So I'm the only person sitting in there taking a practice test that is timed. And this guy came in who was there on the first day and asked about what crimes could prohibit you from having your insurance license, because he definitely had a felony in his record. So the same guy, I don't know how else to describe him other than a twerp, because he just seemed like a twerp.
Can you sell insurance if you're not allowed within 500 feet of a school?
What is the overlap between insurance agencies and schools? Should I worry about that? So he comes into this room that I'm sitting in.
Prevent you from hiring me?
When you say no. So I'm the only person in this computer lab, which is it's just a small room. It's probably a glorified closet. He comes in, he goes, "Hey, do you mind if I listen to music?" And I was like, I guess not. Like, I mean, yeah, I mind, but I don't want to be the person that's like being an asshole, I guess.
Right.
So I was
Like,
also
you're putting me in a situation where I have to agree. Yeah.
And or I have to be like a dick. And it's like, I was not in a phase of my life where I was like as comfortable being a dick. So I was like, yeah, I guess that's fine. Thinking, I don't know, headphones or something kind of quiet. This motherfucker was blasting the song with the hook, "These Hoes Ain't Loyal." And that was his like grooving music for studying. And I remember sitting there and turning around and being like, this is a shared space, man. Like, I was just so frustrated. And he listened, not just listening to it, cranked and was like bopping to it while we're studying. So it wasn't Candy Crush.
So
but,
like Dwight Schrute jamming to air guitar to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra at the Christmas party.
Yeah. In a computer lab with one other person. It was the absolute
I don't know
worst.
why you didn't like ask him for his number.
I know. Hindsight.
Like, he seems
Sad
like
I missed out
your type.
on that apparent ex-con.
I wonder what his policy is for kitchen cleanliness.
You know what? I want to know what he's doing now. I would like to know what has happened with him. Don't remember what his name was.
You can log into your secret Facebook.
Oh my God, and fall down a rabbit hole. You know what? That should be a rule. Kind of like a rule, like if you're on a roll, you can't sit down. It's the same thing. Like you can't look at your phone. You can't open any kind of social media, because then it was literally like I would see one person, it would make me think of somebody else. You would see like their friends, and I'd be like, oh my God, that person. And then I would click that and be like, oh my God, scrolling about shit I don't care about. And then I'd see another person, oh my God. And then I would click them, and it was just like, it was like a dopamine factory. You want to think about all these things you forgot about? And I just kept getting cherries every time. It was just like, I got to go to the next one. And then I got to go to the next one. It was awful.
Cherries every time.
But yeah, I thought this Hyperphantasia was really cool. And I also thought it was interesting that they had like a real, like, there is definitive differences between people that have really vivid imaginations and people that don't. So it's not always just that somebody's like a stick in the mud. Sometimes their brain like,
that is
literally
super
processes
interesting.
things differently.
Yeah.
So I hope that other people have weird, colorful brains. Because I do feel like the inside of my brain is like one of those folders, you know, or a Lisa Frank binder or something. It's just busy and colorful.
With papers poking out at different angles.
That was my desk as a kid, man. It was like I would just shove things in my desk.
That's
and I
my
had
desk
papers
now.
in there, and Remember those desks when you were a kid with all your books and stuff
the
on
open.
it? Yeah. Underneath, and you would store, oh man.
And
Disaster.
it had that absolutely useless little
pencil holder
well that was like, yeah, it just like knocked everything out if you had anything in there. Yeah.
I had weird friends because I was weird. And a friend of mine sat in front of me in one of our classes.
You said that as if you didn't fit in with that group, but sure.
Yeah, I was also super weird.
Go on.
And that's why I had weird friends. So he sat in front of me in one of our classes, and he would sit there with his arms crossed, and he would grab my pencil and put it in his armpit when I wasn't paying attention. So I'd be sitting there listening, and I'd go to write something down, and he would pass a note to me because I would be like, I guess my fucking pencil, and I have to pull it out of his armpit. And then he would write me a note, is it warm? So there was always things that were getting taken off my desk into the armpit, and then I would be forced to grab it. Actually, my friends also like low-key bullied me. I was also like the shortest. I was like the only girl. I would get pushed off of things. Like we had the lunch tables, you know, they had like a little round thing that you sit on, the seat that like connected to the bottom of the table. And they realized that if one of them came up next to me, he could slide me right off of the seat, and then I would get stuck in between the two seats, and I couldn't get out. They'd take my shoes off and put my shoes up on tall things that I couldn't reach. Maybe I was bullied.
Garrett,
I don't know.
Are you sure that you had friends?
I swear to God, we were all friends. I was like, I had to be like 15 or 16.
It doesn't sound like friendship is what you're describing here. This doesn't sound.
Katie's like, so that's why you pushed me off a chair.
Kid explaining. This sounds like the autistic kid explaining to their mom, no, we're really friends, Mom, I promise. Meanwhile, you're walking home with holes in your socks because they hid your fucking shoes on the top of a bookshelf.
I mean, they would give them back pretty quickly. But it was just a... Or there was a thing where somebody would grab like the little things of goldfish or something, like the little snack things, and one of them would burp into the bag to see if the other one would eat it. I hung out with teenage boys. They were gross. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe I got bullied. I don't know. I have questions for people now. I'm going to start texting my friends. Hey.
You know what? Why don't you just like send your therapist an email and see what she thinks?
This podcast has led to a lot of revelations. Maybe the fact that I could have been bullied as a teenager when I thought I wasn't being bullied. Maybe that was one. Who knows? We'll never know. Was my pencil warm? Yes, it was.
Yeah. No, you love to make fun of how aloof I was in high school, and yet I don't have stories like that.
Yep. Stuck in between two seats, and they would take my shoe off. I also had a friend that would always smell things. So, like, they handed around a piece of the Berlin Wall or something, you know, in history class, and he immediately picked it up and smelled it. And it was, I used to tease him about it, but I realized I do the same thing. Now, as an adult, I smell everything. If somebody offers me something, like, can I smell it first? And they're like, yeah. Thank you. Just gonna smell this. Thanks.
Speaking of things that go in your armpit, if you put one end of a straw in your armpit and blow air through it, you can make fart noises.
Yeah, I gotta try that. I thought that was the funniest thing in the world when I saw it.
My mom taught me that.
That's a good one. A+.
Yeah.
Do you think
it's very
that
fun.
You could also use the straw to suck up the dirt?
Argument to have a few disposable straws on hand.
Do you suck up the plate of dirt with that straw?
Only right before you die.
Oh, okay.
Like a Hoover.
Like on your deathbed. You just gotta hoover up all that dirt.
Yeah.
I'm
assuming you have to like suck it up through your mouth. I don't think you can snort it like cocaine.
So you're gonna need to write something up so that your power of attorney knows what to do, right?
I'll leave very clear instructions for my hospice care nurse when the time comes.
I had to give Katie directions one time.
No, that was super interesting. That was a great episode.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just make sure the directions aren't too detailed, okay? Because somebody might get bogged down in the details and skim.
I don't know. Maybe I'll make them roll for initiative. Tune into Patreon. Figure out what that means and why I said it.
And how it was a gotcha. I was thinking about you explaining that joke the other day, too. You know why it's funny? So classic. It's just so good. See, I thought it was interesting. And that's my episode. Fantastic.
Good job. You nailed it.
I need to go tend to my
next week. It'll be
dancing
our 99th episode.
Broom in a bucket. Yeah, our 99th episode. That's so crazy. I don't know if we're going to. So we were talking about. Okay, so we're going to do an assessment, an ADHD assessment for each other. I like that. Okay.
That'll be good.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm pumped.
It's going to be unhinged.
In the meantime, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/thebarisAnkleHigh. For just $5 a month, you get ad-free, extended, and video episodes, along with being added to our close friends list on Instagram. And you get like free goodies from us in the mail and an on-air shout out. It's just pretty great and a super duper way to support us. You can check out our merch at bit.ly/anklehighmerch. And you can follow us on Instagram and Threads at The Bar is Ankle High. We are also on Facebook, and you can find us on TikTok at Ankle High Pod. And make sure that you leave us a 5-star review wherever you find us. And especially Apple Podcasts, when you like write out a review, even if it doesn't really say anything substantive, it like helps and counts. But yeah, writing out a review is definitely top tier. And yeah, until next week on our 99th episode, the 99, always come back for more. Anyway,
What is that?
That's the jingle for the 99 restaurant.
They have a jingle?
The 99. Anyway,
I had no idea there was
until
a
next
jingle.
week.
Turns out Katie has hyperphantasia and she just made up a jingle.
I didn't make it up. That's their actual jingle.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
I'm a hypo. Anyway, until next week, imagine in color. I don't know. Just making me think
So
of Pocahontas
aggressive.
now.
So aggressive. I don't know. Imagining color.
Well, because your image froze, so it's just you staring at me.
Oh, I know. Isn't
Silent,
it
and I'm
so
like,
judgmental?
well, fine, you come up with something.
That's like when I was
butthead.
reading about the ADHD thing and it froze on you being like, I was like, what the fuck is our problem?
Like, okay.
What vivid imaginations.
Fuck,
As
you do the
both of
sign
us,
off, then.
we're ready to fist fight each other because our computer
Panic.
screens froze. Yo, well, fuck you too, Katie. You dumb bitch. Yeah, remember to
Oh, man.
always taste your colors. Color your numbers. And ride the rainbow. Taste the rainbow.
Now we're sponsored by Skittles. Anyway, have a great week, everybody.
Yeah, have a great week, and we will see you next week for the 99th episode.
Yeah.
99 bottles of beer on the wall.
Bye.
99 bottles of beer. Bye. we lost it at the end.